Today, we're diving into a story about a corporate partnership that, on the surface, makes almost no sense. We're going to explore how a brand born in the mountains came to own a brand born on the waves, and what happens when these two completely different worlds collide. So, on one side, you've got the rebellious, surf-soaked soul of Rip Curl. We're talking 1969, an Australian garage, all built around this adventurous idea of the search. And then on the other side, you have Kathmandu. It started in New Zealand back in '87, a much more calculated, ambitious brand for mountain trekkers, all about helping people live the dream. I know, it really does seem like an unlikely pair, right? Which brings us to the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did this happen? And, what does it tell us about the business of keeping a brand's identity alive? To really get this deal, you first have to understand Rip Curl's fiercely independent character. See, this wasn't just another company. For a lot of people, it was a cultural icon. For 5 decades, Rip Curl's founders, Doug Warbrick and Brian Singer, made a very deliberate choice to keep their company private. I mean, they built this thing from a garage project into a global powerhouse with over 2,000 employees, and they did it all while resisting going public. Why? Because they believed it was the only way to protect the brand's authentic, surf-first soul. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You have to look at what happened when their biggest competitors decided to chase those big stock market listings. Their story, well, it ended up being a huge cautionary tale for Rip Curl's founders. And that decision to stay private, it turned out to be incredibly smart. Just look at their main rivals, Quiksilver and Billabong. They both went public, and the pressure from the stock market, it led to absolute disaster. Billabong posted a staggering $860 million loss in a single year, and Quiksilver actually filed for bankruptcy. By watching their competitors totally wipe out, Rip Curl's founders saw exactly what could happen when you trade your independence for public money. So, when the time finally came for Rip Curl's founders to sell after 50 years, this was not some desperate fire sale. It was, as they put it, a really emotional decision. It was about finding the right home for their life's work, their baby, which had finally grown up into a global adult. Okay, so let's flip the script and move to the other side of this deal. Let's look at how Kathmandu, the mountain dweller, got itself into the perfect position to become that right home. Kathmandu's journey was pretty much the exact opposite of Rip Curl's. They totally embraced the corporate world, listing on the stock exchange way back in 2009, and their goal was crystal clear: build a global portfolio of awesome outdoor brands. They started with the footwear brand Oboz in 2018, and then they made their biggest move yet with Rip Curl in 2019. This was no random shopping spree. It was a calculated strategy that eventually led to the parent company rebranding as KMD Brands. All right, let's dive into the nuts and bolts here. We've got our two main players, the soulful surfer and the strategic climber. Here's exactly how and why they came together in this massive deal. And the price tag? A cool $350 million. Now, for Kathmandu, this wasn't just buying another company. This was a game-changing investment. It was a massive bet on Rip Curl's brand power and its potential to grow even bigger under a new owner. The whole goal here was to create what the business world calls strategic synergy. You've probably heard that buzzword, but all it really means is the idea that 1 + 1 can equal 3. The plan wasn't just for Kathmandu to own Rip Curl, but to create a combined force where both brands become stronger together than they ever could have been apart. So the logic behind the deal was a classic trade-off. For Rip Curl, it meant finally getting the financial backing and corporate machine it had always avoided. For Kathmandu, it was a genius move to diversify with a globally recognized youth brand. But here's the huge risk, the $350 million question. Could Kathmandu actually grow Rip Curl without destroying the very soul that made it so valuable in the first place? And that leads us right to the core challenge that the combined company, KMD Brands, is facing right now. It is a very, very high-stakes balancing act. Their success, really, it all comes down to walking this tightrope. They have to use their corporate power, better supply chains, more money, retail expertise, to grow the Rip Curl brand. But they have to do it without losing that authentic, founder-led spirit and without making the same mistakes of overexpansion that literally destroyed Rip Curl's rivals. So when you boil it all down, the key takeaway here is that this acquisition isn't just a business deal you read about in a financial report. It's this fascinating, real-world test of whether a big, structured corporation can successfully nurture the independent, rebellious soul of an iconic brand. And that leaves us with a final, really provocative question, one that goes way beyond just surfwear or hiking gear. It's something for all of us to think about when we see our favorite independent brands grow and change. Can the soul of a rebel brand truly survive inside a corporate machine? The story of Rip Curl and Kathmandu is definitely one to watch.